It is now 12:01 and we have a quorum. It's our January 13th workshop. We have on the agenda today, we have one item on the agenda, but I think we also want to talk a little bit about the heirs annexation if we could. But first on the agenda, we have the Elkton Alliance, and I see Jessica is here, all smiles for us.
And we do have a few of our board members on via telephone if we need any additional questions answered by them.
Okay, very good. I see a phone number of 58 now. Is that one of the members?
That is.
Hello, that's Danielle Carroll. Hey, hi, everyone.
Hey, Danielle Carroll.
Hey, Danielle.
Hi.
Very good. Well, let's just get right to it, if we could. Jess, it's budgeting time for the town of Elkton, and we do this every year, so I know that it may have looked like a surprise to you when I send out these emails, but I send out the emails to a lot of different things, and they all have very similar points on them, and it's so that we as a board can discuss and see what direction we want to go, and it gives us an opportunity to bring in the Elkton Alliance and discuss what the future is, where you're going, how you're going, and so forth. And actually, there was some great questions that came out of it from the board members. And I guess, starting out, the town of Elkton a few years ago, I think we've always given $100,000 to the Alliance. I think 3 years ago or 4 years ago, we actually increased it to 150. The last couple of years, I think it stayed at 100,000. And I mention that because I think that we're not sure where our numbers are going to be coming in at from a revenue standpoint for this upcoming fiscal 22. And we're just not, as far as the revenues go, I'm not really sure yet at this point. So these are all preliminary discussions we want to have and find out, see where we're at as far as being on the same page. The one comment that I'd like to have or say is that I have mentioned this before in the Alliance meetings. I think, in fact, one of my last meetings there, I mentioned that 2 years ago before COVID was that we don't know how the funding is going to be. We were on tight budgets. We're not raising taxes. We were not having a lot of building. But I have to tell you, things have really changed during COVID, kind of in a good way. We've got a lot of construction happening, a lot of build out of some of the houses that's happening through the community. So there is some positive things that's happened. One being we're finalizing this $800 million project called Southfields. I mean, these are things that's going to make a big difference to the town of Elkton community. So do you want to, you want me to ask you the questions that were kind of brought together? Do you want to?
We're here to give you an update and basically just, go over the questions with you and answer any questions you may have of the organization.
Very good. Why don't you give us an update? And then if there's anything that we're lacking, we'll be able to ask you.
Sure. So we did come in September and we gave like a brief update. But by the end of the year of 2020, we were able to distribute $14,000 worth of grants that we repurposed that were given to us to go to COVID emergency for our local businesses. So we were really pleased with that. We also applied for $40,000 grant CD that we are waiting on the agreement. Included in that is actually more COVID emergency grants for businesses. And we did do a $250,000 grant we applied for. That's when the governor did the Maryland Strong Recovery Initiative. They named it MD Siri, and it's specifically for Main Street. You could apply from $75,000 up to $500,000. So we applied for $250,000. Those are still in review, so we won't know when those funds will be available. We were actually able, even with COVID, to do events and one promotion during 2020. And we have been putting up our events more to outsides. So like our Cash for Christmas that we just did, it used to be just downtown. We've now opened it up. We have Bridge Street businesses We had, Kraus. We even had over to S&M that still has the Elkton address, but we were opening up to more businesses to be more inclusive. We also continue to work on the 501c3 transfer. Of course, with COVID and whatnot, the accountants have been burdened with changes in legislations and things like that. So they are still processing our application. We hope to have that completed this year. Of course, with COVID, our budget did drop. We usually have 200,000 annual budget, and we budgeted to 143 for 2020. But I think that's pretty much a quick update. We had 988 hours of volunteer hours last year, which is roughly worth $26,873. So we're really pleased with the amount of volunteers that we were able to gather for these events that we were able to put on.
Thank you, Jess. Can you remind the board exactly what happens when you go from a C6 to a C3?
Sure. Right now we are C6, which is considered a non. Therefore, people don't get that tax write-off if they wanted to give a donation. And as soon as we go to the C3, we will be able to get more. The way it is now, you either sponsor, you do dues, and that's written off as like an advertising expense. Once we become that C3, it can be a tax expense, like your donation to charity. And that will also open us up to other grants. We could also take currently the facade grant program. We are running it in conjunction with the town. Once this changes, we could take that all over again, and we wouldn't have the middleman of us doing all the paperwork, cutting the check. We could do that all in-house. So that would be another benefit as well. And it would open us up to more grants and loans. As we found out this year, we did not qualify for hardly any of the federal, well, actually zero federal funding. Because of the C6, we weren't able to apply for the PPP or any of that. We did receive one Maryland grant that was specifically for 501c6s because they realized there was a need and they were being left out. So the state of Maryland had a grant for $10,000 that we were able to be approved.
Do you, let me see, I got a handful of questions. Was there any grants given to anyone outside of Main Street during with the grants that you received?
Yeah, the two, well, for the ones that we have already distributed, those were repurposed. So it was an A&E grant and a Main Street grant. So they had to stay with the 40,000 that we have applied to for DH. Part of that grant money we will be able to use for outside of the Main Street. But we are waiting agreements from the state before we can that. But too, because they were an A&E grant, they had to stay in those.
What would the effect to the Alliance be if we did reduce your funding to 50,000?
I think it would be pretty dramatic. I feel we've had a lot of changes this year and challenges. Gone from more event driven to an economic supporter during the pandemic. Events, and that's where a majority of our revenue comes through. The state grant this year was a huge, allowed us to make it through, basically, the town grant, because without those events, that's where a majority of our income comes in. So not knowing what the new year is going to hold, and being able to do grants, it's hard to tell how things will end up. If we're able to do a fall fest or whatnot, that will be a huge boost to our budget. But if it's another year where there's no, we're not able to gather like that, it will be dramatic.
I understand.
Well, can I add to that a little bit, Rob? Just with being involved with Jessica, we spent quite a bit of time revamping the budget and doing an amendment when things started to really track past June. We all had hopes this would blow over quicker, but reality set in and we really had to dig in and dive deep. That being said, we had a part-timer in the office. We had we no longer have. So we don't have that support. We're working off of a one staff office with, I will give credit to the fact that Margie basically works for free for us. But I think in the future, this would not be as impactful as it would be this year going into fiscal 2021 for us, simply because we haven't gotten our designation changed. If the IRS wasn't, working on all of those, legislation changes that affect, all the tax compliance and the accountants working through PPP, our hope was to have had our 501c3 by June to match your fiscal year, and hopefully have been able to roll out, stakeholder letters. We've identified, local businesses that are within our town limits and individuals, AUI Power, Ray Jackson, other folks that we've identified to hopefully become key stakeholders for the Alliance to operate. But without that designation, the most we can ask them for is sponsorship. We can't ask for any funding or contributions. It's not within our ability to do so. So we've kind of got our hands handcuffed at the moment to be able to go and achieve those other funding opportunities that we've already really identified, I think, pretty well. So I think, 2021 to have that reduction and not have the event income would be really detrimental. I'm not sure how we would make it through, but, we'd always do our best because we know you have other obligations. But just to answer your question flat out, it would be detrimental to our operation until we get this designation changed and get our other funding options opened up.
Very good. Does anyone from the board have some questions that they could ask the Elkton Alliance?
I'm just curious. Say the Fall Fest, for example, how much do you generate as a profit from that?
That's a great question, and I actually have all of our things open on my screen. I want to say it was around 30,000 last year, but let me pull that up for you real quick. So Fall Fest for 2019, we generated about $25,000 just from Fall Fest alone. So
and how do you do that?
It's all sponsorship, and then
Sponsorships. Okay.
Things like that as well, and the crafter and vendors pay. So the vendors do pay for their spots, and then
Right.
yeah.
So what's the expenditures then? 25 is 25 the net, or
25 is the net from 2019. 2019 was our best Fall Fest year, team. Prior years, it's, maybe 15 to 22 or so, but 2019, we had a ton of vendors, and we did really well with sponsorship because the event had just been, tracking so successfly. But Jessica, you probably have those numbers there as far as gross receipts and expenses.
Yeah. And this one's hard to tell because some of it actually had the advertising from last year. So it listed it as 9, but out of that 9, I believe about 3,000 advertising that actually was paid from the previous year's event that was lumped in because the invoices came in. So yeah, we made a lot more that year for Fall Fest than any other year we've ever had.
I was just curious about, what kind of dent that put in your revenues by not having. Okay.
Yeah,
Jessica, what are your major expenditures for Fall Fest?
Fall Fest, the expenses are mostly like entertainment wise. We do porta potties. So that's why we're able to generate so much, because the expenses it's mostly the entertainment and porta potties, things like that. But most of the expenses are entertainment for Fall Fest. But
And
to bring, it works hand in hand. Because last year for the first time is when we really dug deep and did a children's area that pretty much linked everything up to the Arts Council, because they've always wanted to be involved, but it was always difficult to try to drive people up there. So we made a whole children's area, and we had different characters and costumes, and everyone said that they'd never seen that many people, especially, and they stayed later too. Usually people will, they leave right after like 3 or 4, and people stayed all the way up till the end. So
the other thing with that, Jess, that we did differently was social media has been a huge influencer for us. We really tried to maximize that. So we've done things like, rather than just have one singular fall festival event posted, we've created sub-events. So we created the children's as its own event. We've created the bands as their own event. So that way we've we've cross, posted and made the best of all the social media platforms. So I think social media, when we look back at 2019, it wasn't just a fluke. It was really the event itself, as well as some strategic things that have changed how people, are made aware of or what spikes their interest. And it's not just advertising a fall fest. So we've been able to kind of tweak things a little bit, which hopefully we can look to do in some of our other events as we move forward.
And I was going to chime in and say most of your cost in the past has been your sound setup and your sound band, your band, trying to get a band that's going to be pleasable for the community, and trying to get out there and get high price bands just to bring some good entertainment. So I just want to say that.
Yeah, we do lump all the sound into the entertainment category. So yeah, that is the bulk of the the fees go to that. You are right.
Well, Jess, what if I could arrange to have a few bands volunteer their time?
Oh, we're always looking for good.
You wouldn't have to hire anybody then.
Yeah, that idea, wonderful.
I'm sure I can.
Yeah,
arrange.
I mean, Rob, we've always looked for cheaper or free or local entertainment. I think what they've done throughout the years was try to get something that something unique and different each year. I remember one year it was a Blues Brothers tribute.
Right.
One year it was a so it's more of kind of, okay, what can we do to maximize the fact that it's not a band that you could just go hear anywhere. It's going to be something a little bit different and unique or special. And we've had a lot of different, versions, but if we can get that on the cheap side, we'd be all for it.
And we've also actually spoken with Andrew Dickinson over at the college. They do a battle of the bands, and they're looking for a new venue to do it in.
Oh, there you go.
At the Fall Fest. So they would run the entire thing. There would be like prize money that they would get. So you don't necessarily need to pay them, and you'd have a variety of bands. But I think we would still need some sort of like headliner at the end of the night of something that's really going to draw people. But yeah, we have options, and that would be a good one as well to have free entertainment.
Yeah. We think of it kind of like the way the Union Hospital Foundation runs their annual gala ball. That has its own draw, but they always have a quality entertainment that's drawn from somewhere that's definitely gonna, they're performers, you know what I mean? Not just like, and I say this as a musician, so I'm definitely not, downing anyone, but someone who's not going to have downtime in between songs. They're going to keep it rolling, keep it moving, keep the energy up on Main Street or North Street when it's most needed. And really it's so we can make sure that the patronage goes to the restaurants, the bars, all of those folks who are going to hopefully benefit out of a big crowd that's there for some reason.
Very good. Anyone else from the board have any questions or comments?
No.
Can I, real quick, is there anything moving on Minahanes at all? Or is that just in limbo?
Danielle, do you know more?
They're in limbo. Yeah, I could speak to that, Jean, only because the person that is looking to go in that space is I have a relationship with. Okay. They're stalled. They're stalled at the moment. They have even gone so far. They were ready. I mean, COVID really threw a wrench in that. We would have had a wonderful, wonderful situation on that corner if COVID didn't hit. So one of the biggest things is, and we'll see this and be prepared for it. I know Jessica's talked about it, and especially with some of the landlords, is there's no current language in lease agreements to provide for pandemic or government required shutdowns. And they got stalled out with their attorneys drawing up their lease agreements to come up with protective language on both sides for both the landlord and the tenant. So the tenant was going back and forth on the lease agreement, but very positive that this is what they want to do and where they want to be, in the sense where I know they've already purchased the equipment. I think they've gone as far as having it installed. It's just they're not in a place where they want to open up because they can't be at capacity. They don't have the lease agreement drawn up properly. But I do know that that is their goal still. They're not altering from the space.
Well, that's good to hear. Thank you.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah, I know. I would love to see it happen now, but I think until we can get something to where there's no, closing time restrictions and capacity restrictions, I don't think it's going to move forward. Hopefully their attorneys have made progress on the lease side of things.
Wow. All right. Thank you.
Sure.
Thank you,
So-
guys.
Also, if you have the Fall Fest this year, what happens to the two businesses that have their chairs outside for outside dining? I know that has been beneficial to them since, the COVID and what have you, but, that's an area there that really
Sure.
closes the thing up. Pardon?
Yeah,
How
yeah.
have you thought about that?
Yeah, I
We
believe
have to really take that into consideration.
we have enough street space that whatever spots would be taken up by them. Because typically on Fall Fest, a lot of the people, they use it. So we'd be able to, it would only probably be like, we'd only really lose out on maybe 2 or 3 spaces. Because Central usually takes 2 or 3 for Fall Fest. Elk River, actually Central usually puts they have like an outdoor seating at Fall Fest on North Street as well. And they might just keep that instead of doing the main. So it's if we lose any, it would probably only be 3 or 4 vendor spots. And we have enough all the way up to the Arts Council that we would be able to fill in any area. So I don't think that will cause too much of a problem for us this year.
I
No, it
think it
probably
could be a
won't, but
really
it's just continuity as through the Fall Fest as you walk, but that's good to know.
Yeah, yeah. And having
I think we might be able to use it as an opportunity, Charlie, if you've been to some of the other festivals in different cities or towns for that matter, where we can open up, vendors on beyond where our typical footprint has been. We get, that focus on Main Street, North Street, but if you look at something like the Peach Festival in Middletown, they use side streets, they use alleyways,
Yeah,
they
sure
try
do.
to really get. Yeah, so I mean, maybe it's that we drive further up Main Street to where Elkton Florist and, the American Legion and the hair salon is. I think it would be a good opportunity, and hopefully with everybody being shuttered for so long, we would have a very well-received vendor list to work with.
That's so true. Extending it, it's a good opportunity to try that. And then Middletown does do that. So I'm glad you observed.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Very good. Well, listen, I wanted to mention one other thing that you mentioned, outdoor dining. I would say that I know that I'm one that's 100% supportive of continuing the outdoor dining, but we also would need some type of request so that this board can formally vote on whether or not that's something that we want to do or can't do or whatever it may be. But or if there's a plan in place to make it truly permanent. So
Yeah.
I just need, we need some guidance from our business community, and I can't have it sprung on me at the last minute. The other day,
Sure.
I want to share the other day, it was sprung on me about some lights going across Main Street, and we wouldn't have been able to react quick enough to get lights across Main Street, because that's something we have to contact the state highway and so forth. So.
Sure. Hey,
Understand.
Rob, may I ask you a question on
Yeah.
something you had mentioned before when we talked about this?
Absolutely.
You had suggested, and we were all kind of for, having some sort of guidelines or requirements on days of operation or hours of operation
Yes.
in order to make it available to a business owner. Are you guys still in support of that if we were to look to include it?
Yeah, I think that that's really a must. I think we can't
Agreed.
shut down those parking spots if the business isn't going to be open X amount of hours.
Sure. And then what type of, the only negative feedback we've gotten with having some of the tenants of those, buildings right in there taking up parking space, which I know we've always had that issue, but is there anything that you guys can help support us with, or ideas or thoughts on how we can manage that? Because we don't ever want to have a negative stigma on the outdoor dining. I think it brings way more positive. But that's the only thing, is every now and then we get the complaints of one of the tenants taking up a Main Street parking space. And the fact that there's limited at this time.
Are you talking about the business tenants or the residential tenants?
Residential. It's been a lot of residential, especially toward
Residential.
down there. There's a lot of apartments up there, and people park on the street and just won't move their car. So, and I have seen Claire out there a few times here and there, but I don't think it's consistent enough that it's from doing it because there's.
That's true.
Well, let us give that some thought on exactly what we can do and can't do there.
Appreciate that.
I guess I want to kind of wrap up and mention I will be supportive of putting $100,000 in the budget for fiscal 22 or 21, 22, however I get confused with
22.
22. It's fiscal 22. I am absolutely want to see what the difference would be once you go from the C6 to the C3 status. I believe that will make a difference for you. And I also wanted to mention that I know that we've probably been holding back on not reaching out to the Southfields group, which is, it's an $800 million project in the town of Elkton, and there's some key players there. Trammell Crow, D.R. Horton, Berkshire. The Chipotle finally put their sign up the other day.
Just saw that.
And over on Conica Drive, they're just now finishing, a 100,000 square foot automotive distribution plant. I know that we include the Alliance on our building permits. And I want to stress that I think that these are people that we need to reach out to, and maybe you're waiting till you get the status change, but I can tell you the Cecil County Chamber has reached out to them, and they're ahead of us. And I just think that we need to be try to get out there in front of it also. And
absolutely. And we actually just added Mike Brown. He's now joining the Elkton Alliance Board of Directors. So we're hoping that he will help us.
Very good. And I should have mentioned Sideline Sports.
Yeah.
Very good.
And Rob, as you guys go forward and move forward, I know we have that working memorandum of understanding, but I think we want to cut loose once we get that 501c3, and even in our plans of getting that. So I think, thoughts, expectations, I would like to, and Jessica and I have, and Brad and Margie have talked about this, but we'd like to move forward with, whatever's most important to you, almost as though, you're our overseeing, boss, if you will. I always think of it in those terms, simply because, we want to deliver for the town. We want to impress the town. We want to be worth every penny of the money that you do support us with. So tell us what you want. And I think you've made it clear today, and I know we've got a path moving forward, even though there's some hurdles of relying on other statuses, but we want to continue that for sure.
And Danielle, I will say to you, I'm actually okay if we just focus on Main Street, North Street, and the historic district in downtown Elkton. If that's what the Elkton Alliance wants to be, I want you to succeed. And I want it to be the best that we can be. If reaching outside the town is too much, which it may be, let's not get caught in that. Just let us come back to me and say, listen, we just want to be the Main Street, North Street, historic area. I'm fine with that.
Yeah.
If you're
And I
thinking,
think we can make that designation once we start down the path. I think our hopes are that we can support that 8.1 miles of the town of Elkton and really dig our heels in. But I think, to your point, until we get in the thick of it and see what we're up against with funding opportunities, operations, staffing, I think until we get there, we can't really say in advance. But that's our goal, is to be able to get there.
very
Can I
good.
make a suggestion?
Sure.
Go ahead, Gene.
We have a downtown master plan that's like 20 years old. It might be a good idea if you're able to obtain a grant to update the downtown master plan. And then that would help guide and give us a priority list of priority projects to focus on.
Absolutely. Yeah, that
That'd
would be.
fantastic.
Typically the grants open up in April, but I know with COVID things have been, a little off. But yeah, we'll definitely apply this year, the fiscal year 2022, for downtown master plan, because I think it expired last year or 2 years ago. It was like a 20-year plan, but it's expired at this point.
Jessica, do you all still have your hands and eyes on the businesses that are currently vacant? I know it's 2020 right now and things haven't been moving well, but we're going to come out of this and, moving forward, I guess, you want to hopefully they would have some consideration to make things better downtown for you if you're talking about going from one end of the street to the other.
Absolutely. I do keep a list, and I'm in the process of updating that again because things constantly change. But I have a list of downtown vacancies. I also have the list of all the vacancies on Route 40, and I have had, some interest in businesses located working.
Well, very good. Yep.
Anything moving on the Old Rupee Tuesdays?
I have not heard any for that size yet. The most of the ones near smaller square footage.
Okay, thank you.
Very good. Thank you, Jessica, and thank you, Danielle, for joining today.
Thank you.
Yeah, for the opportunity, we appreciate it.
Thank you all for your time.
All right, thank you. I wanted to take a few seconds and we've been going back and forth with the heirs property. It's kind of not even in our hands at this point. The county has tabled the decision of whether they're going to change the, change the zoning from high density residential to highway commercial district. And it's in their hands. There's nothing really we can do at this point. There was a question of whether we own that intersection. I still don't believe that we've got a firm answer back on that. If we were to take all Bell Hill Road like they're requesting from us, then it would create a enclave, which is really against what the state planning office has told us we cannot do. So we're kind of in between directions here.
Rob?
Yeah.
Go ahead. Have we contacted State Highway directly on our own about access off of 279?
Yes, I know they're working on it. The buyer for the property has been working with State Highway and the county transportation roads people and the town on scoping for traffic impact studies. And one of the things that they're requesting is access to 279. They have access, but I think the location of that access is in wetlands. So they wanted to shift the access further to the east. And so they're working with the state, and I sent them an email asking if there's anything they can give us in writing about the status of that. And I got nothing back.
Okay, but if that were to happen, then we don't even have to worry about Bell Hill, correct?
Well, there still may be impacts to Bell Hill. There may be incoming, I'm not sure. It would depend on how.
If we restricted access on any development and kept it strictly on 279,
yeah, I guess
there would be zero impact on Bell Hill Road.
Correct. If you deny access to, and actually the county has jurisdiction over Bell Hill in that area, so technically the county could just deny access.
Yeah, well, we could deny access on the plans, you know, if State Highway would work with the town in allowing that access for, you know, business development. So I mean, I heard a little bits and pieces about State Highway not wanting to work with the county or give the county something, but you know, I'm thinking, well, let's flip the coin over and say that we're the ones that are interested in getting that access. Can you just keep us in the loop on that?
I sure will.
Yeah,
Thanks.
I think it's good points. I guess one thing that really was sticking out to us, Gene and Michelle and I were having a little discussion this afternoon or earlier this morning. And the area that's in question, the town of Elkton has always had it, I guess, since the early 2000s, maybe, or 2006, 2007. Gene,
Actually, prior to that, when I believe when Jim Kraus was mayor, that was in a growth area.
it was a growth area for us, and it was always, the intent was highway. In our
Interchange.
comprehensive plan, it's for,
Okay.
it's been in our comprehensive plan. Somewhere along the way after this, the county actually made it high density residential, which conflicted with our plan. And it all happened at the same time, quite frankly, as this Elkton West Artesian deal, or in and around that area.
I mean, it may have been zoned high density residential prior to the adoption of their comprehensive plan, but in light of our comprehensive plan, there probably should have been a discussion as to whether they would continue it with a high density residential zoning. And they had adopted their comp plan after our comp plan was adopted.
So there's a lot of little things going on. Really, there's no action we can take until they get it off the table. They've got a table.
There was a letter from the Maryland Department of Planning, because we're required to, when we go through the annexation procedures, which we are following as written in the land use article and the local government article. What was the point I was going to make? We're supposed to be following this certain procedure where we have our public hearings after we have our public hearings, and the county is able to comment on that. The state is also allowed to comment on that. I'm required to contact both the state and the county for comments prior to our public hearing. And I believe I forwarded everyone, I'd forwarded it originally in December, but I forwarded you again the letter from the state when they reviewed this, and they pointed out discrepancies in the language of the county's comprehensive plan, where it sort of agrees with our plan, even though they're denying the change in zoning. So I highlighted those. There's a couple pages there that I sent out to everyone. So, I mean, the state's pointing out that, you know, there's a conflict there and they don't understand why.
I don't believe the mayor mentioned the fact that Danielle Hornberger sent a letter to the mayor, essentially to the town, that she opposed any change in the zoning there for a number of reasons. And that may have considerable influence on the council, because she's executive leadership for the county. I could imagine as a governing body, they may actually give her credence in terms of what she opposes or approves.
Yeah. What I'd love to know what her reasons were.
I can
But
read
one
the
of them was
letter
the
if you'd like
impact
me
on
to.
Bell Hill Road, I think.
I have the letter in front of me if you want me to read it to you.
Why don't you read it, Jane?
Our administration opposes the annexation of the Preston and Letitia Ayers property located on Bell Hill Road, Swallow Drive, and Elkton Road per County Council Resolution number 67-2020. After discussion with the town and the developer of the property, it is our understanding that this property will be rezoned to commercial to facilitate a logistics center. The property is currently zoned residential. A change in zoning from residential to commercial will produce truck traffic on Bell Hill Road, as State Highway has not granted access to Route 279 in two previous proximately located applications, and has given no indication that they would do so in the future. Bell Hill Road is a residential road serving nearby residential units. It is not designated for truck traffic. As a general principle, Cecil County does not support additional truck traffic on residential roads. Furthermore, Cecil County has existing commercially zoned land in our designated growth corridor for logistics operations, and much of this land is located in already approved enterprise zones, as does the town of Elkton in the land within the Southfields project. Accordingly, our administration opposes the annexation request, which would have the effect under Maryland state law of keeping the property zoned residential for at least the next 5 years.
Oh. Oh. Interesting.
I will scan that in and send it to everyone.
Thank you.
One of the things I'd like to comment on, and Gene and I talked about it earlier, when the developer for, I think it's North Point or whoever, for the Ayers property had informed Gene that they were working with the state highway. My experience with the state highway and writing several years ago, several years ago, that they would deny access to 279 for any traffic on there. And when I asked Gene to contact them, if they have anything in writing, I don't care if they even have any communications with the state highway that a discussion's ensuing, I'd be interested in it. And Gene, as she has said, has not received anything from them to support their premise that they are working with the state highway or have any likelihood of ever getting access, whether it's through wetlands or any other source. So I don't know. And I think that Danielle Hornberger is on point with that in terms of the state highway denying access to 279.
Well,
unless we get something from somebody, specifically from the state highway, that they acknowledge the possibility of access.
I can take another look at the scoping meetings that they've had, which have included state highway in those scoping meetings. I understand they have asked for it, but in order for that to be processed, it has to go probably through a couple different divisions of the State Highway Administration for approval. But it was my understanding that there were active discussions with the state on this, and that the developer, the buyer for the property, was optimistic about getting that access.
Off of 279?
Yes.
I would suggest we communicate directly with the state highway on that. It'd be beyond the district engineer. So it'd be somewhere out of the Hanover office that we would have to deal with. If she has some people, or North Point or whoever has some contact people, that's who we'll go for.
Okay.
Yeah, it amazes me they wouldn't allow us access off of 279 when they allowed that mess up in Northeast to occur. I'm sure.
272 is a mess.
Oh my gosh. Yeah, I can't even believe that was permitted, but it is what it is.
Well, very good. There's a couple other things real quickly. I just sent everyone an email about Maryland Rail Service. It's a survey. Actually, if everyone could fill it out in a very positive way, maybe we can get the MARC train in Elkton and maybe pass this survey on to everyone that you know. And maybe we can get this thing moving in a positive way. And then I guess the last comment I wanted to make was, please contact Gene Minner or Chip Bromwell. I think Chip may know, Gene, I don't mean this the wrong way, but I think Chip may know a little bit more about what's going in some of these businesses on Main Street right now. But he told me a little bit about Minahanes today and a couple businesses next to Labella's that's going in. One's going to be a little pizza shop. And then there's also, he might be able to tell you about the Elkton Diner location, who might be looking. So there's a few little things that really we can't disclose too much because I know the confidentiality that they give on these projects, they really can't say too much in these live meetings, but maybe as individuals, you could go and and squeeze it out of them. And but there's some great things happening.
You know, a lot of things are happening. I still think we as commissioners, and I know, you know, need to be put to the forefront sometime. And I've often told Lois that, you know, you're elected by a general amount of people and you getting things last doesn't make sense.
No.
And like I said, I've been good with that, but you know, I wouldn't want to be one of the last people knowing. But
No,
you got a point there, Rob.
Yeah, I think
A lot of times, though, if a property is in negotiations, it has to be confidential until they go to settlement, until they're positive. They don't want anything going wrong with the negotiations for the sale of the property.
I can understand that, but if they can trust one of you in the office, they should be able to trust us as well.
they wouldn't tell
If
me
you
about the
understand what I'm
five
saying.
guys.
Pardon?
They wouldn't tell me about the five guys until
But you understand my point.
Yes, I understand it completely.
Okay, good. That's what I want to get across.
Understand completely.
Yeah.
I was
I mean,
also
you have always been good to let us know what's going on, so I commend you for that. But
as soon as
otherwise,
I find out, I let you know.
See, that's the problem.
I know it is. And there's new owners. There's new owners of the complex where the Paris Foundation is in the Shagrin Grass Building. I heard that through the coffee shop today, and then Chip confirmed it. He looked on line, and they've been doing some sprucing up over there. But the previous owner sold it, and it has went to settlement. Not sure what they're going to do.
So you don't know what the Paris Foundation's future is, or?
I do not know. I
Mm,
do not know.
okay. I have something to report to the board.
Yes.
I'll keep you in the loop. I observed the planning commission meeting Monday night. I was interested in the sports complex. And of course, at the end of the meeting, I just had to chime in a little bit.
You can be the ex officio if you'd like.
Yeah, that came up in discussion. Is that, yeah, that's a whole nother discussion. But Rob Massimiano, I hope it's okay that I speak for you, Rob.
Depending on what you're going to say.
No, we had concerns about the proximity of the baseball and softball fields to the residential units on Magnolia and then on Frenchtown Road. So Mike Brown actually reached out to us and called me this morning. He wants to come over and look at the ball field that's next to our house and just have a discussion on that aspect of our concerns. So I'm going to meet with him and see what he has to say. I think the bottom line is we are just concerned about safety and liability, you know. So
Absolutely.
I'll shoot an email and let you know if there's anything to report from our conversation.
Yeah, Gene and I, having lived next to the ball field for so many years, are well aware of the distances the balls can travel, the property damage that has ensued. Luckily, no one has gotten hurt, but it could very well happen. We've had some very close calls. We relayed all this to Mike Brown just to prevent these same things from happening over by Southfield and to prevent any possible lawsuits against them. And he was kind of grateful for our input, actually.
It's good. Yeah, it's good.
Very good.
Yeah, it is.
Anyone else have anything to say today? Hearing none, let's adjourn this workshop. And listen,
Thank
I
you.
wanted to remind everyone our next meeting is at 6 o'clock
Thank you.
On Thursday.
Yes.
on next Wednesday. It's at 6 o'clock.
Yes.
So